So today we'll be closing the chapter that we've been working on, which was Gajendra's Prayers of Surrender. The last text in this chapter is 33, but it doesn't have a purport. So the verse that we'll be chanting together is the next chapter, entitled Gajendra Returns to the Spiritual World. And so it's Canto 8, Chapter 4, and it's Text 1 that we'll be chanting responsibly. Okay. Shri Sukho Vacha Tada Devashi Gandharva Ramesana Guru Ganaha Mumuchuhu Kusumaram Samsantaha Karma Tadare Tada Devashi Gandharva Ramesena Guru Gamaha Mumuchuhu Kusumasaram Samshantaha Karma Tadare Tada Devashi Gandharva Ramesana Purugamaha Mumuchuhu Kusumasaram Samsantaha Karma Tadare. Please chant. Shri Sukho Vacha Tada Devasi Gandharva Brahmeshana Purogamaha Mumuchuku Kusmararam Samsarat Karma Tattare. Shri Sukho Vacha Tada Devashi Gandharva Ramesana Kuparogamaha Mumuchu Kusumasaram Samsanta Karma Dadare. Shri Sukho Vacha Tada Devashi Gandharva Ramesana Purogamaha Mumuchu Kusumasaram Samshanta Karma Tadare. Shri Sukho Vacha Tada Devashi Gandharva Brahmesana Purogamaha Mumuchu Kusumasaram Samshanta Karma Dadare. Shri Sukho Vacha Tada Devashi Gandharva Brahmesana Purogamaha Mumuchu Kusumasaram Samsanta Karma Dadare. Okay, translation. Shri Sukho Vacha. Shri Sukadev Goswami said, Tada, at that time when Gajendra was delivered. Deva Rishi Gandharva, the demigods, sages and Gandharvas. Brahma Ishana Puroganaha, headed by Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. Mumuchuhu, showered. Kusuma Asaram, a covering of flowers. Shamshantaha, while praising karma, transcendental activity. Oh, sorry, I blended two things together. It's actually samsantaha, while praising. Karma, transcendental activity. Tat, that. Gajendra Mokshana. Hare, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And translation reads, Sri Sukadev Goswami said, when the Lord delivered Gajendra, king of the elephants, all the demigods, sages, and Gandharvas, headed by Brahma and Shiva, praised this activity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and showered flowers upon both the Lord and Gajendra. Purport. It is evident from this chapter that great sages like Devala Rishi, Narada Muni, and Agastya Muni will sometimes curse someone. The curse of such a personality, however, is in fact a benediction. Both the crocodile, who had been a Gandharva in his previous life, and Gajendra, who had been a king named Indradumya, were cursed, but both of them benefited. Indradumya, in his birth as an elephant, attained salvation and became a personal associate of the Lord in Vaikuntha, and the crocodile regained his status as a Gandharva. We find evidence in many places that the curse of a great saint or devotee is not a curse, but a benediction. Okay. Om Jnanatimrandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll just read the translation of the previous chapter, the last text that didn't have a purport. Thereafter, seeing Gajendra in such an aggrieved position, the unborn Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari immediately got down from the back of Garuda by his causeless mercy and pulled the king of the elephants along with the crocodile out of the water. Then, in the presence of all the demigods who were looking on, the Lord severed the crocodile's mouth from its body with his disc. In this way, he saved Gajendra, the king of the elephants. So that was the ending of the 8th canto, 3rd chapter, the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Gajendra's Prayers of Surrender. The chapter has an introduction, the new chapter. It's not very long. I guess I can read it so it will set a kind of framework for what's coming in this particular chapter of Gajendra Returns to the Spiritual World. So, this 4th chapter describes the previous birth of Gajendra and the crocodile. It tells how the crocodile became a Gandharva and how Gajendra became an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There was a king on the Gandharva planet whose name was Huhu. Once this king Huhu was enjoying with women in the water, and while enjoying, he pulled the leg of Devala Rishi, who was also taking a bath in the water. Upon this, the sage became very angry and immediately cursed him to become a crocodile. King Huhu was very sorry when cursed in that way, and he begged pardon from the sage, who, in compassion, gave him the benediction that he would be freed when Gajendra was delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus the crocodile was delivered when killed by Narayan. When Gajendra, by the mercy of the Lord, became one of the Lord's associates in Vaikuntha, he got 4 hands. This achievement is called Sarupya Mukti, or the liberation of receiving a spiritual body exactly like that of Narayan. Gajendra, in his previous birth, had been a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. His name was Indradumya, and he was the king of the Tamila country. Following the Vedic principles, this king retired from family life and constructed a small cottage in the Malayachala hills, where he always worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead in silence. Agastya Rishi, along with many disciples, once approached King Indradumya's ashram, but because the king was meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could not receive Agastya Rishi properly. Thus the Rishi became very angry and cursed the king to become a dull elephant. In accordance with this curse, the king was born as an elephant, and he forgot all about his previous activities in devotional service. Nonetheless, in his birth as an elephant, when he was dangerously attacked by the crocodile, he remembered his past life in devotional service and remembered a prayer he had learnt in that life. Because of this prayer, he again received the mercy of the Lord. Thus he was immediately delivered, and he became one of the Lord's 4-handed associates. Sukadev Goswami ends this chapter by describing the good fortune of the elephant. Sukadev Goswami says that by hearing the narration of Gajendra's deliverance, one can also get the opportunity to be delivered. Sukadev Goswami vividly describes this, and thus the chapter ends. Okay, so I'll just read the translation once again where we've come up to. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, when the Lord delivered Gajendra, king of the elephants, all the demigods, sages, and Gandharvas, headed by Brahma and Shiva, praised this activity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and showered flowers upon both the Lord and Gajendra. So, Srila Sukadev Goswami, he's telling us that that moment when the Lord delivered Gajendra, the king of the elephants, all the demigods, the sages, and the Gandharvas were present. And even their leaders were there, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. And everyone from those celestial realms was praising this particular activity of Lord Krishna or Lord Narayan, which is the form he came in. And they showered flowers both upon Lord Narayan and Gajendra. So there's a particular reason that this praise has been given. And Srila Prabhupada mentions it in this last section of the purport. The particular act of Lord Narayan is such that the benediction that was inbuilt in the curse given to Gajendra becomes fulfilled. So this is the reason for the praise on the part of all these celestial inhabitants. So if we were to make a generalization from Srila Prabhupada's realized statement, the benediction within a curse from a devotee of the Lord is such that the curse allows the person who's been cursed to receive the favor of Lord Krishna. So it's interesting how it's all inbuilt. Now, the reason the devotee or the great devotee who's issuing a curse allows for that curse to have this inbuilt benediction is because the devotee himself holds a particular view, which is expressed, I thought, very nicely in a particular statement that is found in Nectar of Devotion. But it's a statement that is quoted coming from one of the Pancharatras, the higher Shirsha Pancharatra. So this is a statement that expresses something of the general view of a devotee. My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I do not want any resultant benediction from my religious life, nor do I want any economic development, nor do I want to enjoy sense gratification, nor liberation. I simply pray to be an eternal servant at your lotus feet. So naturally, the devotee holding such a view, it's a very, very strong view, is wishing well for the person receiving the curse. So, Srila Prabhupada mentions that there's a few examples, and he lists 3 of the sages who actually functioned in this particular way. So, the sage is invoking a blessing for the cursed person. So, and that's because it's in accord with his own aspiration to be an eternal servant at the lotus feet of the Lord. So one cannot wish something so glorious for oneself without also wishing something well for another living entity. So now, an example that I thought could be looked at in relation to one of the great devotees issuing this kind of curse with the inbuilt benediction is that of Narada, who cursed the 2 sons of Kuvera. And again, just like the curse that came to Gajendra, it's failing to give proper attention to a very great devotee that brought about the curse. So in the case of Nalakuvara and Manigriva, they were in a celestial lake. Both were in a very intoxicated state, but even apart from being intoxicated, their hearts were filled with pride about their particular position. So they were the sons of Kuvera, and they had great access to sensual enjoyment. So they were in a lake with some naked damsels from the heavenly planets. And when Narada Rishi passed by, they failed to cover up their bodies because of being so intoxicated. They weren't even aware of the fact that their bodies were in that particular state. So Narada Muni, in the Bhagavatam, he's contemplating how he's viewing the situation. So he's not directly addressing them, but this is how he's viewing the situation. He says, because they are living like trees, for trees are naked but are not conscious, these 2 young men should receive the bodies of trees. This will be proper punishment. So this is Narada Muni reflecting on things. And Srila Prabhupada, when he's paraphrasing Narada Muni's thoughts, he puts it as, yes, you shall become trees, Arjuna trees, and you will stand in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj, but Krishna himself will appear in time as the foster son of Nanda, and he will deliver you. So there was the benediction part of the curse. So Narada actually made a very kind arrangement, because he was allowing Manigriva and Nalakuvara not to forget the particular circumstances under which they'd been punished. And he was permitting them to reside in Vrindavan so that at a later time Krishna would come there and revive their dormant devotional life, their dormant bhakti. So very kind arrangement actually on the part of Narada Muni. Now, the interesting thing is that when some mercy finally gets shown by Lord Krishna, or in the case of Gajendra here, Lord Narayan, or Krishna in his form as Lord Narayan, that mercy is not shown because somebody is suffering because of some material conditions in the material world. That's not the reason that mercy gets shown by Lord Krishna. Actually, he comes to show his great kindness to a devotee when that devotee is carrying devotion. So now, it's not just the devotion, but it's devotion that's filled with humility. So those have to be together. And when the devotion is filled with humility, this is how the thought process looks that attracts Lord Krishna's mercy. The thought process is, the Lord is my only shelter. So it's very absorbed thinking and very dependent thinking. So this was the case with Gajendra. If one were to hypothetically look at a situation where surrender isn't being shown, so the most common example that's given in the scriptures is one looks at the deities, but actually just sees the material that they appear to be made of on a physical plane. So one may be thinking, oh, deity is just made of stone or marble. So that actually, having that kind of unsurrendered mood is like not being willing to look beyond just the external, the material. That actually would be a situation in which mercy is not given. So, Gajendra, he reveals something of his thinking at the time when he sees Lord Narayan, because these are the words. So remember from the text we just read that closed the chapter, he's actually seen Lord Narayan arriving, wielding his disc, coming out of the sky on the back of Garuda, so very dramatic entrance, the disc has been welded, and this is how he responds. So it's some indication of that devotion with humility. O my Lord Narayan, Master of the universe, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So those were Gajendra's words that give some indication of the humility he's holding in his being when he finally gets to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It comes out immediately, you are, and I offer my respectful obeisances. And similarly, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, when they actually get to the moment of being able to see the Lord, they say, O supremely auspicious, we offer our respectful obeisances unto you, who are the supreme good, O most famous descendant and controller of the Yadu dynasty, O son of Vasudev, O most peaceful, let us offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet. So, it's interesting to look at how bhakti actually is operating. And my spiritual master, he's explained that in the Priti Sandarbha, what is stated is that bhakti is actually a Shakti or some special potency of Lord Krishna that enters the devotee, and it has a very interesting effect. It starts to soften the devotee. So, and it begins to operate particularly nicely when it's combined with humility. So if one looks at, what is this humility, then it's defined in Bhagavad Gita in the 13th chapter and the 8th verse as not having an anxiety in the mind to receive honor from others. So it means one is not looking to feed pride, because that's what's being fed. And by implication, pride is absent when there's humility. And there's another part of humility. There isn't that insistence on, one's rights, or an insistence or kind of demand even for recognition. So this is all quite strong in terms of a quality to possess, but the great encouragement that's there is that it's actually a quality that automatically develops. So anybody who's taken or come to the stage of taking up bhakti is able to develop humility. And in fact, there are 18 other qualities that go along with it. And they're listed separately, even though they're intertwined in the humility. There's the pridelessness, there's tolerance, there's the absence of false ego. But you can see that they're intertwined in humility, but they're listed separately as particular qualities because of the fact that pride is something that is almost pre-existing, and the humility is something that is killing the pride. So pridelessness and humility, the not looking for recognition or not putting a lot of emphasis on asserting oneself in that kind of more aggressive demand for recognition. So, and of course, being even-minded. So these are some of those qualities that come naturally just through coming to the stage of taking up bhakti. Now, in the deliverance of Gajendra, Lord Narayan is actually responding to the devotional service filled with humility that Gajendra displayed, which is very apparent in all the prayers we've been reading. There's a great humility. He's not asking for any recognition of any kind or emphasizing, what his position is. Rather, it's, constantly offering obeisance to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And hence it is that Lord Narayan arrives and he pulls Gajendra along with the crocodile right out of the water, right in front of all the demigods, and he severs the crocodile's mouth from its body with his disc. So the reason Gajendra is able to see Lord Narayan is because he had very fixed devotional service. And we hear Krishna saying something of that nature to Arjuna too. He says, my dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am standing before you, and thus can be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. That's the rest of that particular verse. It's from the 11th chapter, the 55th verse. So, aham evam vidu Arjuna, gyatum dashtu cha tatvena, pravestum cha parantapa. So this is the confirmation that the purity of bhakti allows for the transcendental Lord to be perceived. So in the same way too, we find that just as Gajendra had his particularly dramatic moment of release from his physical condition, similarly, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, their liberation took the form of Krishna being bound to a mortar, and then with his strength, he entered between the two trees, and so the mortar got stuck. And he just turned clockwise and brought these two huge trees down. It says their trunks, leaves, and branches trembled severely and fell to the ground with a great crash. So thereafter, in that very place where the two Arjuna trees had fallen, two great personalities who appeared like fire personified came out of the two trees. The effulgence of their beauty illuminated all directions. So with bowed heads, they offered obeisances to Lord Krishna. So, this is a statement that comes from my spiritual master, and I thought it's very much connected to this topic. He says that the single cause that attracts the mercy or the kindness of Lord Krishna is that bhakti that resides in the heart of the devotee. So that's a single cause that's attracting Lord Krishna. So to make a connection with the earlier part where there was those special qualities that come just because one is a practitioner of bhakti, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his commentary on Lord Chaitanya's prayer of Trinadapi Sunichena Taror Vasahishnuna Manina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadhari, he says that it's the chanting of the holy name offenselessly that brings the adornment of special qualities. And a natural meekness, a natural humility develops because there's that detachment from matter. And this is the result of chanting. So, of course, he lists 3 other qualities that come. I'll just mention them, although I'm particularly interested in this detachment from matter part. He mentions that there's a pure compassion unencumbered by envy that comes, a spotless heart that's free from mundane prestige, and a respectful attitude towards everyone. So it's actually those 4 qualities just come naturally, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, through the chanting of the holy name. So, of course, with no offenses. So, actually, it's the moment when the holy name appears in the heart of the devotee that's the time when the devotee begins to abhor like material activities. In fact, the devotee is sort of relieved and thinks, oh, I've got no need for material life. It's actually true. So it has to factually happen that the holy name enters the heart, or Krishna starts to reside there. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta explains that as long as one is actually trying to get pleasure from material things, one can't be tolerant. And the reason for not being able to be tolerant is because one's not looking from the proper perspective of what one's position is in relation to material things. So, and the further implication is that one is not even inclined to give up his false ego. So it means that one is so busy conceiving of certain things on the mental plane as being exclusively one's own, like one's understanding of oneself or one's understanding of others. So one actually has a mind that remains deceptive or is caught up in false prestige. So this is the problem that comes just from pursuing material things, with that idea that there's enjoyment that's lying in that. There's no inclination to give up the false ego. So it means that those deceptive ideas of oneself and things in the material world. So also, I mean, within false ego, there's the idea that one's achievements have been brilliant. So one holds on to that idea as well, because it's very important for one's reputation. So these are problematic things that come just from the pursuit of material pleasure. So this is very much contrasted with how, let's say Narada Muni or one of the rishis would have been looking at the world. They're actually seeing everything that's there as some sort of paraphernalia to be used in service for Lord Krishna. So hence, that inability to, even if a curse is delivered, it's within that framework of everything is for the service of Lord Krishna. So, all right, you can receive the appropriate punishment, but at a future time you'll be serving Lord Krishna. You'll be remembering. So, actually what's very apparent through this delivering of Gajendra and the crocodile, and also of Nalakuvara and Manigriva, is that the external event of the appearance of Lord Narayan, Lord Krishna, is that internally they'd actually had been cultivating that love and attraction for the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and hence his appearance. So those are just some short thoughts on this verse. If anybody has a particular aspect of it that they might like to explore a bit more.
Are there curses in Kali Yuga? Are the people still use curses, or do they work in Kali Yuga?
Well, these curses were given by great devotees. So they were devotees of Lord Krishna, and the curses were not exclusively curses. They were, in the ultimate sense, benedictions, because the persons that were receiving somebody appropriate to their consciousness, they were also going to get an opportunity in that more difficult body or circumstance to receive the favor of Lord Krishna. So it's a reflection on the very elevated nature of the personalities giving the curse, that they could actually bring those entities face to face with Lord Krishna. So their bhakti was nourished by the curse given by those particular sages. So the question is looking at if in the present time in Kali Yuga, a curse of that nature can be given. Well, considering that it's actually so much emphasis being put on, at least in our process, to try and chant offenselessly, and just knowing the huge effort involved to not remain on the mental plane, but to actually go deeper into hearing the holy name and coming to a point where one can hear each mantra perfectly clearly and give full attention to the holy name. Just knowing how difficult that is, one can understand that the personalities who have attained the stage of being able to chant without any offenses are personalities that are just like the description of those qualities that come. There's great compassion for others, and the heart is spotless. It's like clean. There's no animosity towards anyone or enviousness towards anyone. So generally, to the sage, the present time, it would, because the circumstances are so difficult and the suffering is so intense, it doesn't even seem necessary to give a curse to anyone. It's sufficiently unfortunate to be in this really suffering condition. I mean, it's such a state of suffering. So there wouldn't be necessity for the issuance of some sort of worse body form in order to eventually get to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because our state also is that our bhakti is very slowly growing, very slowly being nurtured. These personalities that got cursed, their bhakti was already on a very elevated stage. So the next step of just being able to was just to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in person. So they were one step away at the moment when the curse happened, even though it didn't appear to be the case. So it seems that there wouldn't be a huge quantity of persons in the present time, in the present circumstances, that would be have their bhakti be at that stage where they're one step away from seeing Krishna, so that another great personality could, issue a curse that's, a benediction really. First, to find that category of persons that are in that elevated state, and secondly, also the personalities that are at that highly elevated stage are certainly not inclined to think of curses, considering the very great suffering condition that everybody's in. That would be my response. But the mystic powers, those are supposed to be possessed by all devotees just automatically. So mystic powers, again, aren't used freely. So everything's in service and what's necessary for service. That's the whole focus. It's, the elevation of consciousness.
There's also recorded a very famous curse that was in Kali Yuga, the curse that Shringi, the son of Shanika Rishi, did to Maharaj Parikshit, which is very interesting, from what you highlighted, that the famous curses given by the great devotees, the great sages, that that also have inbuilt the benediction to be able to become Krishna consciousness with the punishment. Then there's this particular curse was done by a boy that has been described in the scriptures as the son of a Brahmana, so not the qualification of a Brahmana. He didn't have that sort of purity of heart. But nevertheless, he uttered the curse, and then Parikshit Maharaj, had to die because of that curse. But I guess, Parikshit Maharaj still received, the full mercy of the Lord. So, although it was not or was not the purpose of Shringi to give also a benediction, but nevertheless that happens. But then something also happened when Shringi, because it was an offense to do that type of curse to a saintly king, a pure devotee. And with the curse of Shringi, then it is plain that the Brahminical culture, the Brahminical powers in Kali Yuga were lost, with that curse. So the Brahmanas will lose their ability. So that was one of the results of that curse towards Shringi and towards those Brahmanas, that it won't be an easy thing to be a Brahmana in Kali Yuga. So that's something that is recorded in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I also thought, another curse that was there that appears in the Ramayan, that I think was one incarnation of a saintly lady devotee who was performing austerities, and she was very beautiful, but it was a greatly elevated personality. And Ravana, flying all over the world, sees this saintly lady performing austerities, and then he wants to molest her, and then she cursed him. And what was it? Do you remember the curse on that? There was a particular curse that she cursed Ravana. Of course, Ravana didn't have, it was not a benediction, it was like, a very heavy punishment that she gave, to curb him of, possibly trying to do the same thing again. No, she said that she will take birth again to cause his death. So she was an incarnation. She was the previous appearance of Sita Devi. So she came back as Sita to cause the destruction of Ravana and his whole dynasty. That type of thing. And there was another curse. There was all kinds of curses in the story, but yeah.
Yeah, the curse given by Shringi to Maharaj Parikshit, it does actually also show that the mercy of Lord Krishna is coming through the devotee, because Maharaj Parikshit got audience of a great devotee to have the literary incarnation of Lord Krishna come to him through the dialogue of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So there was, the benediction was there, although it was not given by the person issuing the curse, because of the fact that Maharaj Parikshit was carrying so much bhakti in his heart. So he got the benediction anyway, because by virtue of the fact that he was carrying all the devotional sentiment towards the Lord. And even Ravana's, the curse that Ravana received, it accelerated his release from his suffering condition too. So that inbuilt benediction is there even if in these Kali Yuga, or at least the one, if the curse is given even without the intention of there being a benediction, it's the Lord Krishna is bringing his mercy to bear in the situation by virtue of the bhakti that's being carried in the person who's receiving the curse. So, and that's all. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Louis Prabhupada.